So, guys, today we will discuss the instances of misrepresentation or misleading, or you can say untrue statement in the prospectus. See, the main purpose of the prospectus is to protect the interest of the would-be purchaser who come for the company for purchasing securities, share or debenture. And so Section 270 says that prospectus means any invitation for offer to the purchase of the subscription of the securities. And Section 26 subsection 1 requires certain materials that has to be stated in the prospectus. And from these two sections we can come at the conclusion that the purpose of the prospectus is to provide such information, such relevant information that is helpful for the any potential purchaser before investing the money by either purchasing the shares or giving the money to the company as debentures. Now, the business community many times give very flattering description of the companies, very extravagant, showing the company that it's earning so much huge profit. Otherwise, how the people will be attracted. And just to curb this thing, because if there is any misstatement, if there is any misleading statement, non-disclosure of fact, or any untrue statement, that would harm and that would affect the decision of the potential purchaser. Okay, and so the instances of misleading, misrepresentation, or untrue statement has to be tackled with. And here there are two types of the provision, or you can say we can divide it into two categories. First is the preventive measures, that such type of misleading statement would not be the part of prospectus. Okay, then the second, even if after the preventive measures, if there is any misleading misrepresentation in the prospectus, then what would be remedy? The person who is affected, whose decision was affected because of misrepresentation in the prospectus, in that case the remedies also we will discuss. So here I would like to share you this chart, by that you can understand it easily. Is it visible to you? थोड़ा सा धुंधला है, दिख रहा है guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So here the preventive measures, under the preventive measures we would discuss section 26 subsection 4, section 26 subsection 5, section 26 subsection 6, section 26 subsection 7, section 26 subsection 8, section 26 subsection 9. Then even despite the preventive measures, if there is any misrepresentation or misleading statement, then what would be remedies? Remedy I have categorized into civil remedy and criminal remedies. In the civil remedy, the civil remedies we will discuss under three heads. First, under the law of tort, there is the tort of deceit by misrepresenting any facts. So the damages for the deceit, this is the remedy available under the law of tort. Then under the law of contract, because the making of or you can say the agreement of purchase of the shares or debentures is also this form of the contract under the Indian contract. Act general principle, and there on the misrepresentation, the party to whom the misrepresentation is made can rescind the contract. So rescission for the misrepresentation. And the third one is under our Companies Act 2013, section 35, the compensation under section 35. And in that case the director, promoter, etc. are made liable. But section 35 subsection 2 talk about exceptions if the directors, promoter, or the person who are held to be liable under section 35 subsection 1, if they show that they were not part or they have left, in detail we will discuss under this provision. So in that case they would be exempted from the liability. Then on the criminal remedies, one is under section 34 of the Companies Act 2013, and the another provision is section 36 of the Companies Act. Then we will discuss that when the statement deemed to be untrue. Okay, because if there is the statement and that discloses only the positive fact and has not disclosed any negative statement or any negative fact with respect to the company, whether it would be treated as true or untrue. And second is disclosure should give true and fair view of the company's position. So here the golden rule that through the judicial pronouncement has been held as the important the guiding principle for finding out that whether there is any misleading or misrepresentation in the prospectus. So with that, first I am coming to the preventive measure. For the preventive measure, just give me 1 second. For preventive measure, the framework is that whenever the company want to issue a prospectus, then the company has to provide the copy of that prospectus before the registrar. Why? Because the registrar is the person who has all records of the company, and the registrar can tally that what statement is disclosed here should match with the records or not. Suppose in the prospectus it is written that last year company made 80 crore profit, but the balance sheet that is under section 92 submitted before the registrar showing that it was only 60 crore rupees. Okay, so this thing can be checked. The second is that if the prospectus is issued within 90 days, then the company should make the public offer, because maybe after 90 days, maybe after some time, the facts would become redundant or would change. But some minimum period has to be given, because if only 1 month or 15 days that has to be given, then it would be very difficult for the company to make all arrangement or going through the public offer. So this period. The third is that suppose the registrar come at the conclusion that there is any misstatement or there is any violation of the section 26 subsection 1, that the requirement that is as per section 26, the SEBI regulation that has to be included, it has not been included. So in that case, registrar refused to register the prospectus. And the last one is that even if the registrar has failed his duty, he was unintentionally, even from the registrar also it was passed and got registered, and then there is misrepresentation, or in that case also there is the liability. Okay, so these provisions see under section 26 we are not going to read because we have already read. I just tell you the provision. Section 26 clause 4, when you see section 26 clause 4, just let me share the screen. Yes. So here you can see that no prospectus shall be issued by on behalf of the company in relation to intending company unless before the publication there has been delivered to the registrar for the registration. So to delivering the copy of the prospectus to the registrar is mandatory. And what is the purpose of delivering that copy? It is for the registration, so that the prospectus also form the part of the public document, and any person can go to the registrar office and by giving the fees and as it enabled under section 393 of the Companies Act can get the copy of it. Then you read section 26 5 and 6. Then section 26 subsection 7, that registrar shall not register the prospectus unless the requirement of this section with respect to the registration is complied and the prospectus is accompanied by writing consent in writing all the person named in the prospectus. So that requirement has to be fulfilled. The registrar will see that whether whatever conditions has been mentioned. Yes, Abhishek, I will take your question also. That has to be mentioned. Then section 26 subsection 8, that the prospectus shall be valid if it is issued, if it is in the negative connotation. So if you make it the prospectus if it is issued within the 90 days. And then in the section 26 subsection 9, if the prospectus is issued in contravention of the provision of this section, the company shall be punished with fine and shall not be less than 50,000 rupees, but which may extend to 3 lakh rupees. And every person who is knowingly a party to the issue of such prospectus shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years, or with fine which shall not be less than 50,000 rupees, but which may extend to 3 lakh rupees. So if deliberately, if they not even deliberately, if there is the violation, in that case there is the penalty, civil as well as the criminal also. Yes, Abhishek, ask the question.
Sir, section 26, subsection 7 has been omitted, sir. So, sir, does this section still have effect?
No, if it has been omitted in the new act, because this is the old act I have, in that case, the consequence would be we have to see that whether the registrar shall register or not register. Okay. But in that case also, because the provision is not there, so I don't say that it has to be. But then also, can we infer that even if registrar come or has the finding that the requirement of section 26(1) has not been complied with, okay, even in that case the registrar would register. So in my case he would not register, but I will look after it, that whether, because sometime the omitting the provision from the main statute does not mean it have the effect. Sometimes they have put those provisions into the bylaws, in the rules, regulation, etc. So I have to find out those regulations from where we can infer this provision. Okay, Abhishek, thank you for making me aware. So this amendment, when it was done, in 2018 or 20?
सर ये 2019 में हुआ है ये
19
15
का?
15 अगस्त 2019।
19 का amendment. Okay, 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 okay. Thank you. Now come to the
सर सर
second
एक सवाल और था
aspect.
सर।
Yes.
सर एक सवाल ये था, जैसे मान लीजिए सर कोई सेक्शन ओमिट किया जाता है या कोई सब सेक्शन ओमिट किया जाता है, तो सर इसकी हम लोग इंटरप्रिटेशन कैसे करेंगे? क्योंकि सर हम लोगों ने फैमिली लॉ में कुछ सेक्शंस पढ़े थे, तो सर जैसा आप बता रहे थे अभी कि ओमिशन का मतलब ये नहीं होता है कि वो एप्लीकेबल नहीं होंगे।
नहीं,
देख
ओमिशन का मतलब यही है कि इट वुड नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल। माय ओनली पॉइंट इज कि कई बार वो वहाँ से उसको ओमिट करके और वो बाय रूल के थ्रू भी लगा देते हैं। लाइक इफ यू सी सेक्शन 26, सेक्शन 26 सबसेक्शन 1 में पहले गाइडलाइंस थी कि क्या क्या चीज़ें जो है आपको लिखनी है प्रोस्पेक्टस के अंदर। Then they thought that it would be unwise because maybe the change is required. So they have given the authority to the SEBI, and then the SEBI through its regulation, making all those things available, all those things mandatory. Maybe sometime they add more thing or so in that aspect, I'm saying because subsection 7 is deleted, omitted, or you can say it has been deleted by the Amendment Act. Then section 7, 26(7) would not be there. Is the matter of fact. Okay, but suppose by some regulations of the SEBI or by the rule making power of the central government, if we find this type of the provisions, in that case we can say that still it has. But I just make the corollary that even if the section 7 is omitted, can we say that even if the registrar come at the conclusion that the requirement of the section 26(1) has not been complied with, then also he has to register. So only that thing I was saying. Okay, Abhishek?
जी सर। सर एक क्वेश्चन और था, तो
Hmm.
जैसे इसमें लिखा है सब सेक्शन 7 हैज बीन ओमिटेड। सर ओमिटेड का मतलब और रिपील का मतलब क्या सर हम लोग एक ही मानेंगे कि दिस सब सेक्शन हैज
Yes.
बीन रिपील्ड?
Repeal word is mostly, for the like the statute, whole statute, etc. We use the word repeal. Okay. Omitted and repeal have the same effect. That means now this provision is not on the statute book. Effect has the same, but generally repealed is used for the whole law, and omitted is for the section. But sometime you will see that even for the section also you will find this word repealed.
जी सर, मैंने तभी
So
सर
it's
पूछा
not
ये
hard and
कि
fast rule that omitted only for the section. So, but the both word have the same meaning, that now this provision is not on the statute book. It is not the requirement as per the Companies Act. Okay.
थैंक यू सर।
Should we move further? Now come to the remedies. See, as I have divided remedies into two parts, first I am taking the criminal remedy. For the criminal remedy, we have section 34 and the section 36. See section 34. Section 34 says that where a prospectus issued, circulated, or distributed under this chapter includes any statement which is untrue or misleading in form or context in which it is included, or where any inclusion or omission of any matter is likely to mislead, every person who authorized the issue of such prospectus shall be liable under the section 447. That means if in the prospectus there is any statement that is untrue or misleading, okay, and by that untrue or misleading statement, uh, the which where any inclusion or omission of any matter likely to mislead, okay, every person who authorized to issue would be liable. So here, if there is any untrue statement, if there is any misleading in the form or the context, in the context if it turned to be the misleading, then there is the liability on the persons who were in authorized to issue that prospectus, maybe the director or promoter or some other persons who are authorized to. But here the question left for us is that what is misleading statement, so that we can uh, understand that any statement that giving the wrong indication, okay, and what is untrue statement, all these things we will discuss. First we will discuss these provisions, so then we will have discussion on that also. Provided that nothing in this section shall apply to a person This is the, you can say, defense or the exceptions to the first part of section 34, because section 34 imposed the liability on every person who was authorized to issue the prospectus. But suppose the person who was authorized to issue was was not actively participated, or was maybe many situations. So in that case, what situations are exempted is under section 34 proviso, provided that nothing in this section shall apply to a person if he proves that such statement or omission was immaterial, or that he has reasonable ground to believe and did up the time of issue of the prospectus believe the statement was true, or the inclusion or the omission was necessary. So there is the exception that if there is a caution that the statement was untrue, and the persons who was authorized, if prove that to my knowledge, to my belief, it was the on the fact, later on, even I have discovered. So when I did that, I have no criminal intent behind giving the misleading statement, though in the section 34, first para, it is not that the intention has to be there or not, but the exceptions is showing this thing, that if they believes, if they have the reasonable ground that this was the situation but it turns to be otherwise, in that case, this the belief that it was the true statement, the omission of the statement was on some particular belief, would be termed as an exception. Now come to the next provision, section 36, punishment for fraudulently inducing the person to invest the money. Here the word fraudulently is used, so that means the criminal intent is essential. If any person with frauding, defraud other person, induce the person to invest the money by giving any statement that this company is earning this much profit, etc. Section 36 says any person who either knowingly or recklessly make any statement, knowingly or recklessly. So these two words shows the the mens rea. uh, any statement, promise or forecast, even if saying that this company will earn this much of the profit, etc., or forecast which is false, deceptive, misleading, or deliberately conceal any material fact to include another person to enter into, or to offer to enter into any agreement for with a view to acquiring, disposing of, subscribing for, or underwriting securities, any agreement the purpose or pretended purpose of which is to secure a profit to any of the parties from the yield of securities, or by reference to the fluctuation in the value of securities, or any agreement for with view to obtaining the credit facilities from any bank or financial institution, shall be liable under section 447. So section 447 that talk about the fraud and the punishment is there. So both section 34 and section 36 is referring that if the person is under section 34, if the misleading statement, untrue statement, misrepresentation, then in case the liability as per the section 447. In the section 36, if a person with knowingly or recklessly and makes any statement या promise कि ये profit ही करेगा, या forecast any false or deceptive or misleading or deliberately conceal any material. Here even it is not excuse that the person says that I was of the belief that this person would make this much of the profit, but it turned to be wrong. So that exception also not available here. Now come to the civil liabilities. To the civil liability, first we discuss the remedies under the law of tort. The damages for the deceit. Those who issue a prospectus with the fraudulent statement are liable to pay damages to anyone who purchase shares on the faith of this prospectus. And here there is a very interesting case, a very old case, Derry versus Peak, 1889, LR 14 AC 337, House of Lord. In this case, the prospectus of a company stated that the company had been authorized to use the steam power in moving its tram. The authority was in fact subject to the board of the trade. They have applied for moving the tram with the steam, but the authority has not been given the permission. The application was for the consideration for the board of trade, and later on it was refused. Now the question came that whether this statement is misleading or misrepresentation, and the House of Lord has wrongly decided this case. They have said that because these persons, the board of director who issued the prospectus, have the reason to believe that they would get the permission, but the fact was at that time the permission was not with the company. So the House of Lords decided it wrongly by saying that the belief should be there. If there is a reason to believe that this statement is true, then we cannot question this. Okay. Later on, what development happened on this also we will discuss. The next is the development was that then in the England, the Directors Liability Act 1890 was passed, which rendered the directors liable for the false statement, and our section 35 is also inspired from those provisions. Then the provision, the second is the recession of the misrepresentation. The House of Lords in Holdsworth versus City of Glasgow Bank 1880 LR 5 appellate case 317 held that the contract of allotment must be rescinded for suing for damages, provided that the fraudulent statement was made by its officer within the scope of their authority. So, for the damages under the Contract Act section 75, the rescission of the contract made, and on that rescission the damages, for the damages under section 75 also the action will lie. But here there are some exception where the company, for rescission of the contract, its right is lost, and these are three exceptions. Suppose you as a purchaser of the securities have, through any affirmative act, through any affirmation, express or implied, you affirm the contract. In that case you will lose the right of rescission. Only the damages you can recover, either under the law of tort or under the section 35 of the Companies Act. So what is the affirmation? That if the allottee with the full knowledge of misrepresentation uphold the contract, he cannot afterward rescind. Affirmation may be express or implied. The second exception is by unreasonable delay. Suppose the allottee of the securities, whether share or debenture, got the knowledge that in the prospectus there was the misrepresentation, but he has not raised any concern for a particular time. What would be that time? That is the matter of the fact, has to be decided in every case. So any person who claim to retire from a company on the ground that he was induced to become a member of misrepresentation is bound to come at the earliest possible moment. So any person who is affected by this misrepresentation has to get the remedy of rescission of the contract, rescission of the purchase of the securities at the earliest. But what is this earliest time is the matter of fact. Okay. The third one is the commencement of the winding up. If the company started the winding up, at that time also this contract for the securities cannot be rescinded. So the right of rescission is lost on the commencement of the winding up of the company, but where the shareholder has started active proceeding to be relieved by his shares, the passing of winding up order during the pendency would not prevent him getting from the relief. So this rescission, the remedy for the rescission, that means the contract by which this the allotee want to purchase, that contract can be recited. Okay, but in three situations, when through affirmation, through unreasonable delay, or in case of winding up, this remedy of the rescission would not be applied. Now come to the last, that is the remedies available under the Companies Act. Here is the section 35. Section 35, and how this section 35 has inspired, as I said, that in the Derry versus Peak judgment, the acquittal of the director by the House of Lords caused the widespread resentment. And then in the Britain, the Parliament has enacted the law to making the director liable for any type, this type of the misstatement, and covering other activities also. The Directors Liability Act 1890, and they are the false statement, although they might have believed their assertions to be substantially true, was declared to be liability of the directors. Here, if you see our section 35 of the Companies Act, section 35, subsection 1, talking about that if a person on belief of that untrue or the misleading statement has suffered the losses, because the in the criminal action the losses is not has to be so, but in the civil action, when there is a question of the damages must be the loss suffered by the aggrieved person. So the the losses that is suffered by that misleading or misstatement, in that case the damages by way of compensation would be allowed by the court. And who are the person against whom these damages of the compensation would be allowed, that are also written here. So come to the section 35. It says that where a person has subscribed the securities of the company, acting on the statement included or inclusion or omission of any matter in the prospectus which is misleading, has sustained any loss or damage in as a consequence of, even if there is the misleading statement but the person has not suffered the losses, section 35 or the remedy or civil remedy would not be available. Criminal, for the criminal remedy a person can go that this was the misleading statement, because under the criminal remedy it is not to show that the losses has been, actual losses has been done or not done. Okay, then every person who authorize sorry thereof the company, and every person who, now here the group of the person, like the director of the company at the time of his prospectus has authorized himself to be named in the prospectus, any person who authorized that his name is to be used, that here the principle of the holding out that we read under section 28 of the Partnership Act 1932, holding out, if your name is in the director's name of the company and you are not objecting, then you cannot revert back that I actually not director, you would be liable. So this is the clause B is about the holding out. Promoter, or D is has the issue of the prospectus, and fifth was is an expert. So what is expert, also in the definition it is provided, valuer, etc. That expert person who given company the services would also be liable. Shall, without prejudice to any punishment. Without prejudice to any punishment means both civil and criminal action at same time can be taken. Okay, for the same thing you can take the civil action also, if it falling under section 35 loss you have suffered, and the section 34 also you can take. So without prejudice to the you know uh, any punishment to which the person was liable under section 36, be liable to pay the compensation to every person who has sustained such loss or damage. So how much compensation would be given, how much damages would be given, that has to be ascertained on the fact that how much suffered loss the aggrieved person has suffered. Now suppose the person against who is like the director or promoter, there is this civil action is against that person, and if that person shows that I was not the part of at that time the prospectus, so this section 35 subsection talking about those exceptions. Again here this act that I have downloaded is very old one, so maybe Abhishek, in the new act there are some other clauses added in section 35. So here, so you have to read in that perspective that no person shall be liable under subsection 1 if he proves that having consented to become director of the company, he withdraw his consent before the issue of prospectus. The prospectus was issued without the knowledge of the consent. Okay, or if there are some other clauses also that you have to read yourself. Now subsection 3, notwithstanding anything contained in this section where it is proved that the prospectus has been issued with intent to defraud the applicant for the securities of the company or any other person, or for any fraudulent purpose, every person referred in subsection 1 shall be personally responsible without the limitation of liability for all or any of the losses or damage that may have been incurred by any person who has subscribed the securities on basis of that prospect. And here, when if you remember, when we discussed the doctrine of lifting of the corporate veil, here the person cannot argue that as a director he did on behalf of the company, so the company should be responsible. He would be responsible, he would be personally responsible, and his responsibility would be unlimited. It's not that he argued that as a director I am just only liable for this much of the share that liability I have in the company. So it is just in the form of the clarification. Now quickly, that what is the untrue statement, or when the statement is deemed to be untrue. Okay, a statement is deemed to be untrue if it is first it is false, it is not true. Suppose you said that your company has earned 80 crore rupees in the last financial year, but actually it is 70, it is false. And the context in it is huge. Maybe you have used that company in a particular context that your company is a highest profit making company. Okay, so maybe it is a highest making property making profit company in that particular region or in that particular category, but it may not be in whole category. So here some portion is less, and then they cannot say that no, our company is highest making profit company in IT sector. Okay, so here in the context it has to be seen that in the context whether it is false or not. The omission which are calculated to the mislead such shall also render the prospectus false. Any statement that has to be there but it has been not there, like there is a case of R versus Kelsen. Here the prospectus correctly disclosed that the company has paid the dividend. जो profit होता है, that profit company made the profit, that company share that profit between the shareholder, and when the shareholder get that money is known as the dividend. So the company gave the dividend in a particular period of time 1911 से 1927. Okay, that is fact, but they have suppressed this fact, that they have not disclosed this fact that the company has suffered the losses from 1921 onward, and the dividend has been paid वाज फ्रॉम द वार टाइम प्रॉफिट, जो अर्लियर प्रॉफिट था उसी से ही डिविडेंड बाद में दिया गया. सो हियर द स्टेटमेंट दैट द कंपनी provide the dividend to the shareholder to 1911 to 1927, it is true. But how this dividend has been given? This dividend was not given after 1921 by the company making the profit, but earlier to war time it made the profit. From that profit it has been given. So here suppressing this fact also be termed as the untrue statement. Then, although what prospectus was said to true, it was held to be misleading prospectus, and those who issued it held to be liable for the punishment. Where a statement is true at the time of making the prospectus, but then there is a changes in the situation, and at the time of allotment that statement is untrue. So when the prospectus was get registered before the registrar, it was issued suppose in the month of January, there was some financial position that was true, but it was in the February or March, when the real allotment is done to a person of the shares or security, at that time the facts were changed. In that situation it would be voidable, because the directors cannot be make liable for civil as well as criminal action, because when they have issued the prospectus at that time that was true. But what about the interest of the allottees? So they have right to avoid that contract, so it would be voidable transaction, the allotment would be voidable. Further, it is necessary to avail of all the remedies that the plaintiff should have purchased his share on the faith of the prospectus directly from the company. If the allottee have some other information, if he has not misled by it, in that case it would not be true as the untrue statement. A purchaser of the shares in the open market has no remedy. Open market, the second market, suppose you have purchased from some other person, in that case there is no remedy against the company or its officer, even if it was influenced by the prospectus. Now there are so many liability, so how to draft, because it is always the hanging sword on the directors, promoter, or other officer expert, to draft the prospectus in such a way that in future there would be no the criminal or the civil proceeding against the company. And here is the golden legacy. द गोल्डन लीगेसी, क्या हमें बताना है जो है पब्लिक को. सो डिस्क्लोजर शुड बी, व्हाट डिस्क्लोजर ए कंपनी शुड मेक, डिस्क्लोजर शुड बी ट्रू एंड द फेयर व्यू ऑफ द कंपनीज पोजीशन. द गोल्डन लीगेसी, और यू कैन से द गोल्डन रूल. एंड ये गोल्डन रूल आया कहाँ से? द गोल्डन रूल फर्स्ट propounded by Kindersley. These cases I will write in the your class Google Classroom. So in New Brunswick and Canada Railways and Land Company versus Mugar Ridge 1860, Kindersley judge has first time talk about the golden rules, and then further on it was described by another judge, Pagewood, in the Henderson versus Lacoon 1867. And according to the golden rule, those who issue the prospectus hold out to the public great advantage which will accrue to the persons who will take shares in the proposed undertaking. Public is invited to take shares on the faith of representation contained in the prospectus. Public is at the mercy of the company promoter. So everything must therefore be stated in the prospectus with strict and scrupulous accuracy. Nothing should be stated as a fact which is not true, which is not as in that context, and and no fact should be omitted the existence of which might in any degree affect the nature and the quality of privilege and disadvantage which the prospectus hold out as an inducement to take the share. In other words, the true nature of the company's venture should be disclosed. This golden legacy was condensed in few words, that the whole doctrine as to the rule of conduct between the shareholder and the director. And from these lines of the Judge Pagewood, we can describe these things or these lines, that any fact, if in any context in which you are using, must be true. Then any fact that you are disclosing in the prospectus should be full. There should not be any omission that would affect, that would have some tendency to affect the mind of the allottees. And so with that strict precision, that scrupulous conduct, a prospectus has to be issued. So with that, we have discussed the instances where there is any misleading statement, or you can say misrepresentation or the untrue statement in the prospectus, and these are the measures to curb the instances of the business community for making any extravagant term, any flattering description of the company in the prospectus, just to invite the public to make the offer to sell out their securities. So with that, this topic is